to have a prompt meeting, so we'll get started. Good evening. My name is Lee Altman. I'm a Mecklenburg County Commissioner serving at large and chair of the MTC. Good evening to all of our members and to those watching live via our streaming platforms. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's great to be with you all, and we have an abbreviated agenda.
Can you guys
tonight.
hear anything?
Bill Thunberg. Bill, are you having problems hearing us in the room? Is anyone else having problems hearing us in the room?
I was, John, but I've got it now.
All right.
Good, John.
Mayor Knox can hear. Bill Thunberg, can you hear us?
David Schultz can hear just fine.
All right. I guess maybe it's local with Bill, so we'll continue. Madam Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, thank you. So we have an abbreviated agenda tonight due to the holiday and change of the meeting date, so we will now get started with the roll call. Mayor of Charlotte Vi Lyles or City Manager Mr. Jones? Mr. John Lewis, CATS CEO.
Present.
Woody Washam, Mayor of Cornelius.
Hello, present.
Welcome. Mayor Knox, Mayor of Davidson.
Present.
Melinda Bales, Mayor of Huntersville.
Present.
Mayor Higdon, MTC Vice Chair, and Mayor of Matthews.
Present.
Mayor Simmons, Brad Simmons of Mint Hill.
Present.
Jack Edwards, Mayor of Pineville.
I am present.
Welcome. Mayor of Morrisville, Miles Atkins, or his alternate. Bill, I will count you present for him. Mayor of Gastonia, Walker Reed.
Mayor Reed is unable to attend. This is Randy Gates as his alternate.
Thank you, Randy. Mayor of Monroe, Marion Holloway, or his alternate.
Present.
CTAG representative.
Todd Stice, sitting in for Mr. Tillman.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you. TSAC chairwoman, Chrissy Exlin.
Present.
Mayor of Concord, William Douche, or his alternate. Mayor of Indian Trail, David Cohn, or his alternate. Mayor of Stallings, Wyatt Dunn, or his alternate. Mayor of Rock Hill, John Geddes.
David Schultz sitting in for Stallings.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome. Mayor of Rock Hill, or John Geddes, or his alternate. Wonderful. At this time, we will take up the approval of our October 26 minutes. They're found under the first tab of your briefing booklet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or comments? I will take a voice vote on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Next, we will have our report from CEO, CAT CEO, Mr. Lewis.
Madam Chair, I have no report tonight.
Thank you, sir. Now on to our report from TSAC Chair, Chrissy Exlin.
Thank you, Commissioner Altman and members of the MTC. In our last TSEC meeting, we heard presentations on both the CTC redevelopment and the Silver Line alignment options through Uptown. We did not hold a straw vote on either of these topics, and I cannot tell you which option the majority of TSEC members prefer. But based on the wide variety of questions that were asked during both presentations, I don't think there is a consensus on which plan is best. Regarding the Silver Line, TSAC members had questions about the challenges posed by interlining with the Blue Line from an operational and safety perspective. There were questions about whether this is also an opportunity to extend all of the Blue Line stations to 3-car lengths, which has also been brought up separately outside of Silver Line discussions. There were also questions about having to tear up all of the Gold Line stations if it were to interline with the Silver Line, and the feasibility of turning Trade Street into an entirely transit and bike-only street with no private vehicles. Regarding CTC redevelopment, we heard about the feedback CATS has received from its outreach efforts through surveys, in-person pop-ups, and online town halls. It was also my impression that there's no clear consensus from the public either on which option is best, since there's trade-offs with all of the options. One thing we would like more information on is the cost differential between the three options, as well as between including CTC in a mixed-use development versus standalone, which is not an option currently being considered. I know that funding sources are extremely complicated, and the same money used to rebuild a CTC, hypothetically, isn't necessarily tradable with, say, hiring more bus drivers. But we have to always consider whether the additional cost of a certain option is worth the money, and frankly, the time and attention spent pursuing it. Hypothetically speaking, if it costs double to put CTC in a mixed-use development, does it provide double the benefit to transit riders? And if not, who should really be footing the bill? It also strikes me that some of the concerns riders have voiced about having a climate-controlled, clean place to wait would be alleviated if we had more frequent bus service. We also received an update on bus operator hiring and the upcoming service changes, which restore service to 3 express bus routes that were discontinued at the beginning of COVID. As always, we hope to start seeing restoration of local bus service along the routes whose frequencies were reduced in August because of the labor shortage. Finally, we will be doing something unique in our December meeting after we elect a chair and co-chair for next year and discuss any other time-sensitive issues. We will close our meeting early and hold a joint informal meeting with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. There's a lot of potential to collaborate with the BAC because many transit riders also use a bike for transportation and vice versa. And by meeting together, we can discuss areas where we can collaborate and amplify our voices. We also might look into doing joint meetings with CTAC next year. I think that would be a great collaboration. That concludes my remarks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions in the room for Ms. Exlin? Any questions online? I would like to welcome the Mayor of Charlotte, Mayor Lyles.
I went to the second floor, of course. Habits are hard to break.
So did I, for the record.
So did I.
And Ms. Exlin, I understand that there was no consensus on the CTC discussion, but I would be interested if there were some sort of general trains of thought that you might feel comfortable representing here.
I mean, it's very hard to say. I think we had 6 people at our last meeting, so I wouldn't want to. People didn't share what they think, which option they should go with. I mean, I know which one I like, but I'm one person, and we all have different opinions. And I mean, there's trade-offs. There's definitely trade-offs. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would still be interested to hear your opinion because you're very invested and have spent a lot of time looking at these matters. So you should feel free to share it if you'd like, but you don't want to, you don't need to if you don't want to today.
I mean, I'll always give my opinion. Sorry, and I just had a little brain moment. We are talking about CTC, right? Because I talked about both Silver Lane. Yeah, with CTC, I mean, I think I lean a little bit more towards the terrace. I like the symbolism of having the bus up on the same level as the blue line. I also think if you want to integrate all the lines, if you put it underground, which I'm not opposed to the underground option, but that's 3 levels of transit then. You have an underground bus, you have a ground level gold line, and then you have an elevated blue line, and that's a lot of transferring. But I also realize as a bus rider, if the terrace option, there's 2 levels of buses, and the worst feeling in the world is when you pull in and you see your other bus that you need to transfer to pulling away. You wouldn't even see it necessarily in this option, and then you'd have to go downstairs. Like, it's not climate controlled. Like, there's definitely trade-offs. I don't know.
Well, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. All right, we will now move to our report from CTAC Chair Todd Stice.
Yes. Mine's going to be kind of lame compared to Chrissy's. I was asked yesterday to sit in, so I don't have much of a report. Our meeting yesterday, the only thing we had on our agenda was the adjustments to the Silver Line. One area was at the Bojangles Coliseum, which it's understandable why they want to make some adjustments there in that, and it looks like a rather minor, maybe more costly, but a minor change to the alignment. The other area where they talked about making adjustments was in downtown Charlotte, where they showed the 3 alternatives, which you spoke of. Our committee understood that was just kind of a preliminary review at this time. There wasn't, and so we didn't really have a lot of discussion on which alternative we thought was better than the other. We just knew that, we saw that there were trade-offs from one versus the other.
Okay, thank you. Any questions in the room? Any questions online? All right. Mr. Ford, do we have anyone signed up to speak for public forum?
No public comments, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda will be our single informational item. We have, board members will remember at the October meeting that we were given an update on the Charlotte Transit Center project. During the last month, staff has been conducting extensive outreach with riders, stakeholders, and bus operators. And Jason Lawrence is here to provide us with an update on the results of that public outreach. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's nice to be at the table this time instead of over at the lecture in a different room.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you. So as Madam Chair mentioned, at the last meeting, we walked you through the public involvement slides and walked through at a pretty good level of detail of what both of these options looked like that we took out to the public and gave some background. Tonight, I really wanted to kind of zero in and focus on the public engagement that we received and where, similar to what Chrissy was talking about from TSAC, the public also is kind of under both options, but I think that we have certainly seen some swaying towards one option versus the other. And so if we'll go to the next slide. Just, I think we all know the location we're talking about here, the Charlotte Transportation Center, but this is a really good shot to really get a sense of kind of the space, not only at the transit center, but also everything that's around it. And then thinking through all the land use opportunities that exist at this location, at the intersection of the Lynx Blue Line, City Lynx Gold Line, the Spectrum Center, NASCAR Hall of Fame, and the Convention Center. There's a bit of gap of development in this one area of town. And so as we think through the potential redevelopment of this site, thinking through some of the land use opportunities in this area is also a part of that evaluation. Most of our engagement and evaluation leading to the public piece was focused around the transit operations, and that's mostly what we'll go through tonight. But I did want to put that caveat there about the really importance of thinking about the land use as well. Next slide. We've talked many times with you all about the need of our goals at this location, but also the continuity and service in a temporary facility is absolutely critical to the redevelopment of this facility. We simply can't do this development unless we had a place to put us temporarily for a number of years during that. Oh, thank you, Paulus. And so that was key to the decision-making process we took to select this developer that we're working with. But also, we understand that we're hearing from the public and the outreach that we did that we need to elevate the transit rider experience. Safety and security is certainly a top priority, not only to feel safe walking through the center, but also feeling secure in the facility through ticket-controlled access. And as you know, this facility predates the Gold Line and the Blue Line, so elevating that kind of connection between all three modes will be important in a redevelopment. And we have opportunities for sustainable design that were not around in 1995 when this facility opened, and thinking through how do we incorporate this with the electrification of our fleet and making this a battery electric bus hub will be key to as we move forward with this development. And of course, going back to how we started as an agency, the integration of transit and land use has been critical to us from the very beginning. I think there's been a couple questions. That's what cities do you look at to compare yourself to in this type of projects? And I think we only need to look at South End and NODA and all that integration to really see how important that integration is, and we want to make sure we continue that energy with this redevelopment. Next slide. Just to remind you, the project timeline that we've shared a number of times with you all, that we're very early in this process, and the public engagement focused on that 2019 with the selection of a development partner to begin the conversation of the redevelopment through this public input phase. So just the first couple of years of this process, and as we go through our independent evaluation with the CATS and City Consultant team, we'll have ongoing public outreach and coordination with fellow transit administration, and then with a permanent facility build out in the later part of this decade. Next slide. So at the last, we walked you all through the three options that led to the two options that we took out to the public, but we thought it would be nice to summarize that evaluation in a simple matrix to get an understanding of how the three options did compare. We did eliminate the at-grade option before we went out to the public, And, each of these options had the opportunity to be completely integrated within the mixed-use development. But from a transit operations side, as we compare it to the existing facility, the bus-to-bus transfer, bus-to-rail transfer, we felt could be somewhat improved from today's environment. However, the terrace option and the concourse option would improve upon that. And, go back to Chrissy's note, the bus-to-rail would require more levels of transfer compared to the terrace option that we eventually modified to the two-level option. I'll get to that in a moment. But it did have more level access with the light rail option. Safety and security, we felt was more improved on the terrace and concourse, whereas the at-grade would have more openness to it, having more driveway access on Trade and 4th Street. A little bit more complicated to enclose that entire facility. And I'll also note, because of the nature of having more driveways and more circulation on surrounding streets, that grade option made it difficult to have that completely integrated experience with land use and really activating Bavard and Trade Street as well. Climate controlled was stronger on terrace and concourse, and then obviously with terrace being more above the street level had more natural lighting than both of the concourse and at-grade option. And so as we go to the next slide, that initial evaluation led to us eliminating the street level. The street level also had fewer bus bays open to us in this development proposal. It would have 12 versus 14 on the other two options. The terrace option we recommended refining, and that's the option, the two-level option we took out to the public. That was primarily needed to refine because of it crossing over 4th Street. Did require us to shrink the size of the temporary facility that would be required on the block across on the corner of 4th and Bavard. And so we felt that was still a good option to continue to refine, but get it down to one block, and that's the option we took out. Concourse was the option that we took in just below street level that we took as a part of the RAISE grant application. That was successfully awarded through that effort, and we did advance and refine that as well. And those are the two options we took out. On the next slide, you can see these were the options we walked you all through in more detail at the last meeting. The two-level terrace and the concourse option were what we took out to the public for additional evaluation. The two-level option would have a ramp from 3rd Street crossing over 4th to connect to a light rail level option. That's the level that Chrissy was talking about. 8 bays at that space, and then 6 bays below at street level. And then the concourse option would have street level access primarily on 4th Street with a roadway at street level that would connect between 3rd and 4th, allowing us to have kind of full access to 3rd and 4th for all buses coming and going to the transit center. We would have a single exit out on the Trade Street with the concourse option, but all bays and all of our kind of programming that needs operator restrooms, ticket controlled area would all be at one level on the concourse option. Next slide. So we did a lot of public engagement in a very short period of time with a real, intentional focus on the 4th and 6th of October around what do people want to see in a new transit facility, what is important to them. And then beginning on the 11th, we had our virtual public meetings walking people through the options. We met with our citizen advisory groups, and we had to this body at the last meeting and had 2 in-person meetings at the Belmont Regional Center and 1 at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center. Next slide. And by the numbers, we engaged a lot of bus riders at the CTC pop-ups, right around 400 people, just under 500 views of our virtual public meetings. Did not have as much attendance in person as we like, but we had a lot of engagement virtually and a lot of engagement in person at the pop-ups. We also talked to bus operators and got a real understanding of what their opinion and what their needs would be in a new facility. Talked to over 100 at those opportunities, and then just under 350 completed surveys. Next slide. That first survey, the passenger experience, it was interesting that nearly a third indicated that they use rideshare, bike, and scooters, and we think that's really consistent with our goal to diversify our mobility options at mobility hubs with rideshare connections, scooter, bike share, and all emerging technology that's occurring in that space. Shelter, climate control, digital schedules, wayfinding were all indicated as being high top priorities. There's been some question of whether or not uptown, do we need to have still have a large facility in uptown? Our customers said yes, 70% said we still need to come downtown to make that connection, but 30% detailed other locations. And that's really consistent with our goal of decentralizing some of our network to transfer to hubs outside of uptown. So think about Blue Line Station, 26 opportunities to engage with bus riders and transfer at Rosa Parks and Eastland, and all the other, South Park, other transit centers as well. But we feel we have some improvement to make on the transfers. Only a third said that was extremely convenient, and many felt unsafe crossing the bus lanes. And although we did ask about ticket-controlled access, that was ranked as a priority, but visible security presence and better lighting also ranked really high. Next slide. As we took the design options out to those virtual and in-person pop-up meetings, people really gravitated towards like the higher level of natural light in the two-level terrace, because at least one level would have more access to natural light. But the ease to bus transfer, I think people had a hard time getting around that. They would have to go up multiple levels to transfer to bus, and saw that really great having in a single level. And then having a bit more climate-controlled space with that, being able to really secure that. And we took a lot of verbatim comments and comments that people just told us in the survey, and that most of those received were focused on increased security, but also need for service frequency. Frequency is something that can cure a lot in a transit system, so certainly we heard that. And just over 50% currently preferred that concourse option. Next slide. To the bus operators, we went out to the bus operator shift change. We caught them at 4:30 in the morning and then 2:30 in the afternoon, and an employee luncheon that they held at our South Tryon facility that same week. And really just, asked them as they were going on to their shift and getting a sense of what they wanted to see in a new facility. And they certainly, really gravitated towards, more operator amenities, but more kind of quiet space, place to get away from some of the noise and having a place to decompress from their frontline work. But they consistently stated that the passengers should be ticket controlled, that if you're in the transit center, you need to be there to use the transit service. More amenities throughout our system was also ranked very high, and they were right around 50-50 with either option. There wasn't a clear difference from them. Next slide. So as we take that two-level terrace and concourse options through that same type of analysis, the bus-to-bus transfer ranked, as we're comparing them to each other, bus-to-bus transfer not as good as the concourse, being on two levels. Excuse me. Bus to rail, because you have 8 bays on that light rail level, would be slightly better than concourse. Either option is going to be safe and secure. We've heard that very clearly from our customers. Climate control better on concourse, more natural lighting on the two-level terrace, and the green check marks there indicate where our public indicated a preference to. Excuse me. It's that time of year. And so the public feedback that we heard in our comments and as well as on the survey is what the green check marks come in at. Next slide. What we'd also like to touch on is the financial framework for this option. As you think through how we approach this, building a standalone facility versus a facility that's completely integrated within a mixed-use development, there are differences, and they're not complete direct comparisons. Building a facility standalone would range somewhere around $45 to $55 million. That would also include the need for a temporary transit facility, finding a location to do that, renting and leasing that space. But you also don't get to leverage opportunities for raised grant, the value of the land, increasing the tax base. So although any option that is integrated within a mixed-use development would be more than building a standalone facility, it doesn't necessarily meet all the goals that we're trying to do. And, I think at the end of the day, what are the goals we're trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve a new transit center? That's one goal. Are we also trying to achieve a transit center that activates land around it and is completely integrated and consistent with our goals of integration of transit and land use? But in the integrated space, you see there the breakdown of the potential funding sources for this, the value of the land into this equation, the raised grant at $15 million, some city funding through COPS and CIP, and the opportunity for a tax increment grant for the property coming in to help that out, and then also a CATS budgeted funding going towards the facility as well. And just to be clear, in our budget, we don't have currently $55 million to redevelop the transit center at this point. We do have funding in our budget to participate in the construction of a temporary transit facility, which we do need, of course, to move this forward. Next slide. So next steps for us, throughout the month of November, we've been meeting with the Transportation Planning and Development Committee with the Charlotte City Council. We will go back with a recommendation on the 3rd, on the 9th in January, an action review, and then on the 23rd, there'll be an endorsement as we talk through that memorandum of understanding with the developer, and then coming back to this body for a recommendation and to take action on a locally preferred alternative for an option to move forward with. We do need that in the context of the upcoming environmental studies that we have to do. That's a requirement of the federal funding through the RAISE grant that we got. So we do need to take action on that to move this to the next step. And with that, I'm happy to take, a couple other links here. We do have a story map and survey that's currently on our website for this. You can go to the virtual meetings. We have 3 of those. I recommend not going to the first one. I had a worse cough than I had tonight, so it was a little choked up there, but the other 2 recordings are good. We have a public input address there, email that people can send their comments directly to. We've been receiving some comments through that, and of course, you can call 336-RIDE and give comments directly. And then with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jason. All right, let's first start in the room. Who has a question? Yes, sir.
Jason, in light of the possible alterations to the Silver Line going possibly through Charlotte or using the blue line, would that affect at all the design that you're looking at for the CTC?
I think at this point, that would have to be a conversation with the development team as what that means as far as, but I think it's too early for us to know that, but I do think it's important to note that would, if the Silver Line were to come on either of those options, then, the need for that facility would be increased potentially with how we would think about the routes that go to that. I think that's more of what we would start with, but I think that would be a conversation with the development team. But we would want to make that decision first with the LPA before we address that.
Thank you, Todd. Anything else? All right, anyone else in the room? How about online? Okay, then I'll ask a few questions. Mr. Ford, can you pull back up the slide with the pie chart that said financial framework at the top? Thank you. Because I'm working to get some clarity around this. And one thing that I think is helpful for me to just, and for the public to sometimes hear from our CAT's attorney, this is a City of Charlotte project that the City Council is deliberating closely on and, having a lot of discussion around, but it also comes before the MTC. Can you just help give us a little bit of clarity about the lanes that these 2 bodies have, the MTC and the City and the Charlotte City Council, in this decision-making?
Madam Chair, if I could just add a little context before Brad begins. This is a project that is a joint development between the CATS, the MTC, and the city. But the only thing I would change in that caveat is this is a transit project first, in that it is on CATS land. It is part of disposing of a federally funded facility and using federal funds to build the new. So the primary outcome in this must be the transit facility. The other goals of the project, the mixed-use development and the others, would be secondary to that. But I'll then turn to Brad to give the relationship between the MTC as a decision-making body and the City Council on this.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So with respect to the MTC, okay, you can hear me. With respect to the MTC as established by the interlocal agreement, the MTC considers and approves long-range transportation plans, operating programs, capital programs, and budgets. And so the City of Charlotte, in terms of this project, would approve contracts. So a contract with the developer or a construction firm, disposition of land, those would be approved by the City of Charlotte.
Okay, that's helpful, because it is a complex, interlocking decision-making process that I think is not necessarily intuitive to the public. Am I to understand then that in all likelihood, what would happen is that the city of Charlotte would vote, and then it would come to the MTC to follow up with a second vote to confirm whatever is ultimately decided? Is that the likely process? Mr. Lewis?
That is correct. I think in the fact that this is a mixed-use development meeting multiple goals, not just transit, but also economic development and land use from the city, our goal, my goal, is to bring a recommendation that has been fully vetted by the city council and has their input for the MTC to consider after that.
Right, okay. And I'm used to, on the county side, in my Economic Development Committee, getting a REMI analysis that helps us to understand when we have economic development projects, what the net gain will be to the taxpayer or to the public coffers. And so I guess one question I have is the difference in cost between the two proposals is, more than $40 million, but there's a lot more economic, there'll be more taxes generated that'll go to the public coffers under the more expensive analysis. Will we hear at some point what sort of the net out to the community would be with all that development and all those businesses that would be paying taxes under the second scenario?
Sure. I think that's a great question, and not one that I think we as transit staff are equipped to answer, but I think maybe at the next MTC meeting, we have the city economic development staff come in and address that for you.
That would be so helpful.
May I add?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that we would have to justify this project in a way that it does show the economic analysis. So we usually have an economic analysis, and that information would be included, I think, if the council moves forward with the public-private partnership. But that's not decided yet. And so I don't think anyone is prepared right now, and it's probably going to be several months before we get to that place where we're talking about, are we ready to do something like this at the city level?
That sounds good. All right, last call for questions. All right then. Thank you again, Mr. Lawrence. So on to
Madam Chair,
yes,
this is Bill Thunberg. If I could just ask one kind of procedural question.
please.
Do we need to reflect anything in the upcoming budget related to this with regards to either planning or legal or anything else, or do we just wait for the city?
So great question, Mr. Thunberg. In our 5-year capital program, we have set aside the $12 million that you would have seen in the CATS funding portion of that along with the federal funds for the RAISE grant that we received. So you will see that in next year being reflected as a part of this project in the ongoing 5-year capital program.
Thank you.
All right. On to our action items. As there are none on our agenda, I will turn to MTC Commissioners' business. There are no items listed for consideration or discussion. However, is there anything that members of the MTC may want to discuss now?
Madam Chair, if I could, I would like to address Mr. Lewis, since I believe this is the last meeting that he will be sitting in, and that we are not meeting in December. John, I just want to say thank you. I think for those of us that have been vested in transportation for a while, if you will look back on 2015 and remember where we were versus where we are today, 7 years later, under your leadership, you need to be commended. To bring this thing through a pandemic and still come out on top, I thank you. There's a lot of work to do, but I can't thank you enough for the hard work that you've done, John. I don't know where you're going after this. I hope you land somewhere local where we can still interact and work together, because it has been my pleasure to work with you for these 5 years that I've been on this board. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Knox. And I believe we haven't made a definitive decision that we're not having a December meeting. We're going to wait to hear from staff. Is that right?
That is correct. Madam Chair, at the last meeting, we actually took the action of moving both the November and the December meetings back 1 week, recognizing they coincided with Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. Typically, this board does not meet in December, but I think we wanted to leave the option open considering the number of projects that we have on the table, that if needed, we have that slot already available. I will say as of this moment, other than the Silver Line, there really aren't any other pressing issues for December, but staff will certainly let you know in plenty of time what the actual disposition of that meeting will be.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. All right, I think that concludes all of our business. We are adjourned, and I wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you.